As you've seen, Joko Widodo, the Indonesian president, is in town, a meeting with Anthony Albanese. So what do we make of relations between the two nations right now? How significant is the visit? Joining me live is Robbie, Gaspar, president of the Indonesia Institute. Thanks for your time. It comes at an interesting point in time. Indonesian presidents get 2 terms. He's coming towards the end of his. So does the visit matter a bit less, or with his popularity riding high, is this sort of crucial that Australia make sure it retains good relations with him and his likely successor as Indonesian president?
Yep. Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, Joko is coming towards the end of his term, but I think he's still very passionate about leaving a legacy. He's been there for almost 9 years now, coming towards the end. So 2 terms of 5 years each. So I think this visit is extremely important. They've got a massive green energy boom in Indonesia, so he's looking to shore up sort of essential critical minerals. They have the largest nickel resources in the world in Indonesia. We have the largest lithium resources. We also have cobalt. We have other essential minerals as well that are sort of required to be able to make those batteries. But this doesn't also not about just also the green energy. It's also about sort of education. Is it private equity? Is it banking? Is it finance? And so forth. So I think this is very important, his visit. It's his first visit since 2020. So.
Yeah, it's a really fast-growing nation, and you sense as well the relationship between the two nations has matured quite a bit. If we go way back when to, of course, the live export ban and that happening suddenly, the issue of people smugglers and boats and the so-called flotilla that would be sent towards Australia, it was pretty rocky relations for quite a while, and there was a sense that the two parties were not really, or the two countries, not really on the same page. That seems to have slowly changed over the past few years.
Definitely. We've seen Anthony, the Prime Minister, travel to Indonesia twice already since he's, come into office. He was there during the B20. He was there alongside the President of Indonesia when they closed the B20, which was a massive sort of, feather in his cap as well. And also for, Joko to travel to Australia just before he's about to finish his sort of, last term. I think that's a massive sort of sign that the relationship is in actually a really good place, but we still need to build on this and still need to try and improve those, people-to-people links and business-to-business links between Indonesia and Australia.
How do you see Indonesia strategically? It seems to, I don't know if it's fair to say, be having a bit of a bet each way on China. It's embracing it as an economic partner while also being pretty wary of what China wants in the world and its part of the world?
No, that's correct. Sort of, how do you say it, Tom? Previously, probably Indonesia's always looked probably north, for trading partners, and they haven't really looked south towards Australia. But now I think, under Joko Widodo and sort of, with his green energy boom, with the universities, with agriculture and so forth, they've looked south. But also, Indonesia has played a bit of a, how do you say it, they've been quite neutral in their stance with respect to the issues going on with China and also with Australia as well. So, I think, Joko will be having those discussions, I think, with the Prime Minister while he's here in Australia. And, I think they're sort of sitting in between there. So I think they're caught in a little bit of a rock and a hard place.
Do you think Australia is yet to fully embrace Indonesia in terms of the size of it, the proximity of it as a neighbour? For most people, their main experience, let's be frank, is probably Bali. There's not much Bahasa, a little bit more perhaps being taught in schools. There's a limited amount in terms of immigration and visas in terms of what we grant Indonesia. Is that the next step if we really want them to embrace us?
Yeah, definitely. For us, I think we look at sort of Australia first. And, we have 1.3 million Australians travel to Bali every year. But, Indonesia's bigger than Bali. It's a country of 7,500 islands spread across 5,200 kilometres. And there's so many other great places that you can visit there. And, I lived there for 8 years and I got to experience Indonesia and just got to see, I was travelled all the way past Aceh, all the way across to Jaipur and got to see Indonesia and how beautiful it was. And going back to that sort of what you're saying with respect to the language, that's really important. How do we develop that Indonesia literacy, that cultural competency? And that starts from, I think, learning the language. We've seen a big decline in the amount of students studying the language. I completed a bachelor of sort of a major, like Bachelor of Business, but with a major in Indonesian And my cohort, we only had 5 that graduated that year. So we're seeing a massive decline. I think we need to sort of try and stop that decline and try and increase the amount of people learning the language. So I think that's going to really improve those people-to-people links and that relationship between Australia and Indonesia. And also going back to what you said about the visas, that needs to be addressed, and it looks like that will be addressed. We think it's not right. And recently, the Indonesian Institute, we released a position paper highlighting these issues. How do you really develop, better people-to-people links if people are not able to travel freely? That's, for example, Indonesians, need to fill out a 16-page document, need to pay $140 for every application, and they're waiting in between a month to 3 months to be able to sort of obtain that visa. And I think we are missing out on having Indonesians be able to travel to Australia, be able to build those better people links. So, if that can be addressed, we'll be really, really happy, because I think they'll go a long way to sort of improving the relationship between Australia and Indonesia.
Does seem to be one of those intriguing double standards. Just finally, having lived there for so long, how would you sum up the view of an everyday Indonesian person or Indonesian people towards Australia?
I think it's a good view towards Australia. I think they look to Australia, like as a place, that with respect as well. And I never had any issues in Indonesia, and I fell in love with the place, living there for 8 years. And I think once I learned the language, I was able to develop, understand the culture a lot more, and it's really developed better people-to-people links. And I'd never been to Indonesia before I went there in 2005, and I went there in 2005, and I was blown away by the place, how diverse it is and how big it is. And yeah, so many great places to visit. And it's not just Bali, you got Jakarta, you got Surabaya, you can go all the way to Medan, to Makassar, and there's so much potential opportunity for Australians to be able to travel there and, just develop better people-to-people links. So, I had a fantastic time there, and I sort of encourage anyone who has the opportunity to travel beyond Bali to do so.
Robbie, Gaspar, good to get your thoughts today. Thank you.
Thank you.